If you're someone who's always looking for ways to improve your health naturally, this episode is for you. If you're someone who is conscious of your impact on the environment and you're looking for ways to minimize that impact, this episode is for you. Meet Karen Tan, integrative health practitioner, wellness entrepreneur, natural maker, mum of two, and the founder of OhGiGi Natural Organic Tooth Powder. Karen's here today to share her personal story and tell us about the growing OhGiGi brand. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Nadine. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pretty quick turnaround. I'll tell you my little background of how I found OhGiGi. I just got an ad on Instagram, and I had my birthday coming up. So I like when you get ads and you're like, oh, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that. So OhGiGi tooth powder was on my list for my birthday in April. And so I ordered it and I've been using it ever since. So probably only about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Loved it. But when I saw, I had a little note in my package that said, and I don't know if it was you who personally packaged it or think maybe it
I do.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we do every
And
single
it
year.
was like this is how many toothpaste tubes we've prevented from going into
Yeah, landfill.
landfill. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I need to know more about this woman. And so I went onto your website and loved your story. And so I invited you here today. So thank you so much for joining me. I've rambled already.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really nice to hear how you've come around to the product or found out about this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's so nice to like be, you know, it feels very personal when you get a message in your, with your product and you
Yeah.
find out that, your story as well, which is one of the things that I love about doing this podcast is we do get to hear about people's journeys to where they are today. But also, you've got a grand mission.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're here to talk about all of those things today. So do you want to start us off by just sort of giving us a bit of background without giving too much away all in one go? Because otherwise we'll be like, oh, that's it then. We've
Yeah.
got to drag it out. Just about your background, like how did you come to be where you are, doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. I guess in a little bit of a nutshell, and we might go into bits and pieces a bit later, is I have been on a bit of a health journey for the last, I think, since about 2015. So I don't, that's almost 10 years now. I think when I started, it was about 8 years in. Um, and prior to that, I was an architect. Trained as an architect, worked as an architect for almost 20 years. Had kids, and then I think when we have kids, like, things change in your body, and yeah, a few sort of health issues turned up, and it progressively got worse. And then you add all this going back to work and the stress levels. Yeah, so I had chronic oh no, sorry, oh my God, multiple chemical sensitivities. That was this kind of starting point, but it was something that I think looking back, I've always known. I just didn't know there was a label for it. Mom and dad used to call me a hypochondriac when I was a kid. Um, and then when it came up again, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I guess from the start with the multiple chemical sensitivities, I started removing stuff, products and fragrances, especially after I had my first child, my son. Like I just during pregnancy, I just couldn't deal with any sort of perfumes. It's like, and all my whole collection had to go in a bin, just made me really sick. So I haven't been doing like, just the basics and all for a while. But then when that came up, I just went gung ho and took everything out, including my husband's deodorant and aftershave, all everything went. And then I was buying like a healthy toothpaste. I wasn't already using any of the regular supermarket brands. But then, like in 21, I kind of went, oh, I might just do a bit more of a little audit of the house and what we've got and what we're using. And I was also sort of looking at hidden sugars, sugars in your diet, and it was really easy to sort of look at and avoid or change. But hidden sugars, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was hidden sugars in your supplement capsules and that sort of stuff. So I started looking a lot closer and realized that I had sugar in my toothpaste, and And then when I looked further into it, some of the ingredients, even in the healthy toothpaste brand I was buying, I was like, oh, maybe that's not something I should be using. So I was learning on a detox summit. It was COVID at that time, online in the States, and someone started talking about tooth powders and oral microbiome. That was a whole topic on itself with detox. And that got me really fascinated. It was really expensive to get that product in from the States. And I looked at the ingredient list and I went, oh, I've got everything here. So I started, putting something together and used it and was like, wow, this is amazing. Like I had, such an amazing experience with how clean my teeth was feeling. And that's how it started, really. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I think this is a really great conversation. I've certainly, when I had, I have never experienced, well, never known to experience chemical sensitivities, with any kind of inflammation or illness. But when I had kids, it was that was when my awareness really sort of came to household products. And I started making a lot of my own household products. And then gradually over time started making my own skincare and that sort of thing. And I have dabbled in making my own toothpaste. So I'm kind of aware of these things as well. Would you kind of tell us, because I think that, like you said, you weren't aware that you had chemical sensitivities. Can
Yeah.
you share with us how some of those things were showing up for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a kid, I would just break out in hives every now and then. But the GP didn't really know what was going on. And there were big lumps of hives all over my skin. And I was just calamine lotion, stay at home for a few days, and that's it. As I got older, it would, this was prior to being a lot more aware. Like I noticed I'd get a headache when, you walk through the Myers perfume aisle,
Mm,
like Lush and, all those places, stores with really strong smells. Um, but I don't know, I just kind of, you just kind of put it down to, oh my God, maybe something else that had happened that day or you didn't sleep enough and that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, but then when I was pregnant and the perfume smells, they were really strong. That was just like a real no. Like it just, was feeling nauseous and about to vomit and that sort of stuff. So that was probably the starting point of being a lot more sort of like, I can't like it's a straight no. Like I can't do perfume. I couldn't even spray it on myself. But I was still tolerant of being around people that, had, and you work in an office, everyone comes in wanting to smell nice. And that's how we know a lot of society and that's how it's sort of, that's expectations and that's what's standard around. And then I, yeah, so I fell sick the first time. I had chronic fatigue, like I was literally sleeping 10, 12 hours, trying to wake up to get the kids to school and then finding it really hard to do that, but getting up because I had to. And then the moment they went to school, I'd come back and I'd just go into bed and fall asleep again. But on the outside, I looked all right. I looked normal, but inside, I just like every bone, every muscle just felt so tired. Um, yeah, and then had some tests, and the integrative health practitioner doctor that I was, he says you've got multiple chemical sensitivities. You're obviously very sensitive to things, and just suggested I started to move away from that stuff. And I think around that time when I had by the time I had my second, and I had started sort of got a Thermomix, so I was starting to dabble in that whole like more from the food space, like really eating from scratch and, your preservatives and all that sort of flavorings and stuff. And we did a lot of work around our gut health with like the GAPS program and stuff like that. And that helped me heal a lot better, along with just moving, I guess I would sort of say the surface level of like, your fragrances, your cleaning products, your sort of some of your beauty products that you use and that sort of stuff. Um, but then I started studying built through Thermomix because I was doing demonstrations and all for custom
okay.
stuff. I came across an amazing, well, I think she was probably, I don't know who she is, I can't remember her name, but she was a guest at one of these demos I was doing. And, I go around chit-chatting to everyone and I go, and what do you do? And she's like, oh, I'm a building biologist. And I went, oh, what's a building biologist? And she told me what it was. And that night I went home, looked it up, and my brain just went, and I could not sleep that night because I was back in architecture at that time, and building biology is all about the built environment and how that affects your health. And being an architect, working in the commercial space, building all these buildings for offices and, community buildings and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, we've been so focused on building for the environment, and my career was over that ESDs, with solar panels, Section J, all your energy initiatives and strategies, but no one was designing for the occupants that were in the building, and we spend like over 90% of the time in buildings, and this is pre-COVID. Obviously, over COVID, that percentage just went out of the water.
Mm.
And I just want, wow, like that needs to happen. So it became something that was so obvious to me, and something I became so passionate about that I ended up deciding to study building biology. So I started studying with Nicole Bilgema, and probably about two, three subjects in, when I was doing mold and doing a few of these, air quality subjects, we came to the realization that it probably wasn't a good idea for me to become a building biologist, because that was the whole idea. I was going to leave architecture, be a building biologist, but had that architecture
Mm.
background. Because that was probably when I really realized that I, I call it an ability now. I don't call it a disability, because I'm a canary. Like, I could walk into a building, and within 4 or 5 minutes, if you see me sort of running out, or like, going out, making an excuse to want to leave, like all my, spider senses are up. So over that period of time, I started documenting the things, like, so, and there's a microbiologist in the States, like she's gotten to a point where she's so refined, depending on whether it's a tingle or a headache at the bottom of her head, or a metallic taste. She can even connect it to the type of strain of mold that's in the air. So I'm not to
Wow.
that level, but like, so you get headaches, you get sort of fogginess. I get different types of tingling sensations on my head, or like I get a full-on headache, and whether it's at the bottom or top. My eyesight goes blurry. The reaction to the skin tends to generally be more around food stuff that you're eating, like so preservatives or things. But yeah, so those are some of the few things. And I guess, mold exposure is also a big thing in terms of chemicals, not necessarily chemical sensitivities, but yeah, but in terms of just fragrances and all those sort of things, it's yeah, mainly headaches, tingly feelings, sometimes even ear ringing, just depending on how intense it is and that sort of stuff. So
Wow. That's hectic.
like taste on your mouth. Sometimes that
Yep.
happens too, like a dryness.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a silver sort of taste in your mouth.
Mm.
It's quite
Okay.
common too. Yeah, so that was yeah, I mean, I would have been really good as a building biologist, but it would have come as an impact to my health. So the way I
Because of the things within the buildings, or because of like the things that people are wearing, or a bit
no,
of
but just
both?
getting exposed to it.
Mm.
So
Okay.
at the end of the day, multiple chemical sensitivities is a very broad, I guess, definition.
Mm.
Um, so there are, there are, so in that space, I went back within architecture, tried to sort of, get the architects on board, going, hey guys, this is the next big thing, and this is way before COVID happened. And and tried to sort of create some frameworks around how architects and designers can design within buildings. So you've got the building, you've got the things that are within the building that can affect someone, like your paint, your VOC, and all those sort of things. And
Right.
now there's a lot more things. You hear about low VOC paint, and that's also low VOC carpets and vinyl and tiling and that sort of stuff. So all those things are things that I guess you put on a building that have chemicals in them too, that off gas, that new car smell. Some people love it,
Mm.
some people don't, but all of those are chemicals that affect some people and some don't, some people. But then you've also got the occupants that are
Yeah.
going in with stuff on themselves that are also then contributing to all the lovely mix of chemicals that are in there. And I think where I got to with architecture is I realized that it would be quite impossible to create almost a matrix of what is in the air, because you've got so many variables with people. You can probably control the built environment in terms of what you put into it and measure that. But being able to measure, because especially if you've got public buildings and stuff, you never know. you might have a constant number of people that wear certain things that are office workers that come in every day, but you've got visitors and guests. And
Mm,
so, yeah, so it's got really complicated in terms of, and then I guess from the architecture scene, there is sometimes a bit of that attitude with any industry. We've done this the same way, it works.
yeah,
Why should
right.
we change things? And it was a lot easier to, I think, measure something like your energy from the sun or gas and
Mm,
electricity. Measuring happiness, measuring, retention rates, and all those sort of stuff of productivity and that sort of stuff isn't as easy.
yeah, it can be a bit
You know,
more subjective.
yeah,
Yeah.
very subjective happiness, what's the measure
Mm,
of happiness. But I think since then, I think COVID has helped to um, move some of these things forward a little bit too, just because, we were in that situation of not being able to work in our buildings, and then just that whole virus thing created a lot more awareness around the quality of
ah,
the
okay.
environments.
Yeah.
But I still think there's a long way to go. But anyway, back to chemical sensitivities. So yeah, so I guess I chose to leave architecture to go, right, you know what? Because it was really hard having conversations with the top people that were, in charge of the budgets and that sort of stuff, because, you could put in 3% extra and make a difference with the building in terms of the design, but then you still had like, I probably think at least 50 or 60% of what is in the environment is contributed by the people because you're the ones that are using the building. So I chose to leave that, became an integrative health practitioner to sort of really educate from the bottom up. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I kind of segued myself out of that into more, I guess, the wellness space, and then did wellness coaching for quite a couple of years, a lot of it through COVID, supporting corporate teams with their wellness when they were working from home, got some amazing results, but then burnt myself out again.
Oh no.
Yeah, and like I'm of that belief where obviously I have to, you know, have a certain I'm when you're working with people and helping people with their health journeys, you've got to have your own container of a full cup too. And when you don't have a full cup, you can't fill someone else's cup. So yeah, that's left that. But that was a really good point of time because it allowed me to sort of really push a little bit more with, I guess, some of the questions because a lot of my symptoms came up again, and then finally got a bit more of an answer as to what was going on with myself. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite some journey.
Yeah, but
I
I
mean,
think,
but it's all kind of connected, isn't it?
yeah,
Like the
yeah. I mean,
building biology is like health through your environment, and because of your experience, like you've ended up where you are today because of your own experience and your passion and your interest to essentially repair your health
yeah, exactly. And I think
from the bottom up.
exactly. And I think, wellness as an industry has become such a big industry, and there's so many, subsections to it and stuff, and there's so many trends that happen. But like taught my clients and stuff, really just the foundations, just the basics, just go back to basics. You don't need all the gadgets first and all that stuff. You just, work on your sleep, work on your
Mm,
water intake, work on your diet, just work on some of these really simple things that do not require a lot of output from a budget point of view or cost, and start there first and see what happens when you make those changes before you even try and do anything else. So yeah, I'm all about this sort of, just sticking with your everyday foundations and habits,
yeah.
and I guess yeah, it was really interesting because I guess we talked a lot about habit stacking too, and brushing teeth is a habit, and like looking back, like we spend 2 minutes a day, morning and night, so that's 4 minutes minimum, or should be, brushing our teeth, but I never sort of thought about connecting a habit, stacking a habit to go with that, even if it was just, reflection or some
Mm,
gratitude that you could do in your head and stuff. So that was, yeah, there's always still space and opportunity for a lot of things to do before, you go buy that fancy gadget or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I am totally with you. I have worked in the fitness industry for a long time, 15 plus years, 20, closer to 20 years. And that's the thing that my husband and I are always telling people, go back to the simple things, getting enough sleep, making sure you get
Unlike,
outside, daylight.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, real food. Like if it's in a
yeah,
packet, then check what's in that kind of stuff, like the simple stuff that you don't need any extra cash for.
Yeah.
That's always the great starting point. Um, I Before we talk more about the tooth powder, I want to say toothpaste, but it's not toothpaste, tooth powder. And I would love to hear a bit more about, if you know, because I think that this is something that a lot of people probably aren't that aware of, is those chemical sensitivities through cosmetics, deodorants, that sort of stuff. There's the some of the things, the symptoms that you mentioned: headaches, rashes, tingling, dry mouth, fatigue. But there are some other, even more dramatic things that can happen. Are you able to talk to some of that, like in terms
I
of
mean,
hormonal
yes, yeah,
dysregulation,
yeah, yeah. So allergies would probably be a
allergies?
big one. So like I've never had any allergies my entire life. And yeah, sort of, probably 15 years ago, yeah, now, like suddenly developed a crustacean allergy. So I think it's just, all these sort of chemicals we know are hormone disruptors.
Mm,
And I think it's not so much about that, you could spray perfume on yourself once and then you'll get sick. It's more just, it's such a micro dosing, it's just that tiny exposure, you know, 10 they say like before a woman walks out the door as they're getting ready in the morning, they could be exposing themselves to about 150 different types of chemicals.
wow.
Your moisturizers, you've got obviously your toothpaste, your makeup, your hairspray, perfume, everything. It's minimum 150 types of chemicals. So like even before you walk out the door, you're doing, and if you're doing that daily, over time. So I just think my body just got to a point where just when I had enough, and then obviously something, I know what the event was. I was working in an environment that, I think just had really poor air quality, potentially some mold, and that just tipped my body over. And that's
Mm,
how, you could suddenly move in a house, you don't, it might have a tiny bit of something, and then over time it's suddenly you just get sicker and sicker. So definitely for me it was allergies. I definitely think my gut health was 100% affected. I was having a lot of issues with bloating and just yeah, that sort of stuff. Fatigue was a huge one for me. Um, and I think just over time, there was, like it's hard to draw a direct correlation and stuff, but like I think that and stress, my
mm,
fibro, that sort of stuff, like just you see things that hold all that autoimmune conditions and stuff, there is a direct relation. And if you look at, some of Nicole's research, you can see as all these sort of new products and manufacturing sort of started in 50 plus years ago, like the rate of cancer has gone up. Like
mm.
it's the rate of everything increasing or happening is very sort of there's a correlation there. So yeah, and then we're not talking, chemicals are in food too, so it's
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's like it's the build up, and it's that, like, there's just an overexposure because our liver is designed to cleanse our bodies, right? But if the liver is backed up, then it's got
yeah,
to go somewhere, and that's
yeah,
basically what's happening because we've just
yeah.
got so many chemicals in our everyday lives,
Yeah, the skin, I think, is the first thing that it comes out in,
right?
your skin. And like looking back, I was going, yeah, there was a whole probably about a year where I just had sort of like it looked like bites on my body. Like I was paranoid, like oh, I thought I had bed bugs, I had thought I and but no one else in the house had any of the bites. It was just me. It was itchy, but they looked like bites. And I went to the health doctor and I showed him the bites, and he goes, if I could get $1 for every time one of you guys come in and tell me you've got bed bugs or a spider bite, I would be a millionaire because it's symptoms. It's not a bite. It's your body telling you something very clearly. Hello. And these are just, small, your eczema and all these
Mm,
small little signs your body's saying, please, something's not going well. I'm feeling out of balance. And then if
mm,
you address it from a inside out point of view, then bigger things happen, and then you get bigger issues with your health and your skin and that sort of stuff. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what started for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's often not that, like you went to an integrative practitioner, so health practitioner, so they're obviously going to have, be looking at the causes, but often people will have something out of balance and they'll go to a regular GP, and then
Yeah.
the symptoms often just get
Yeah.
masked with the medication, which is also
Steroid cream for your
yeah,
eczema.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like hormones. I feel like so many women that I know have really bad periods, and one of the biggest things I think that impacts that is chemical
Yeah.
sensitivities.
Yeah.
When I was getting pregnant, I had a IVF, and I went to have acupuncture after the egg was put in, and I had a list of things you mustn't do in the next, and it was like, do
Yeah.
not spray deodorant. And that was kind of like the first time that it had really been brought into my awareness that had such a big impact. Now it completely makes sense. But I think that for a lot of women is one of the areas, our hormones, and why our hormones are out of balance is because of our exposure to so many toxins.
Yeah, I mean, you've got fragrances in literally everything now. Your cooking sprays, your
Washing powders.
washing powder, exactly. Like, please don't use fabric softeners. They smell. I mean, like, there's okay. So I guess when I was in that, so fragrances are probably the biggest thing out of anything. Like if you had, because so they're little, so how it works, how a fragrance molecule work, or these sort of artificial chemicals that, are your artificial sea breeze smell or whatever. They're little round, I liken them to little round atom with lots of thorns in them, on them. And literally like, and that carries the fragrance or the chemical
Yeah.
fragrance. And when you smell it, or you wash with it, or even like when you hug someone that's you
Yes.
piece of clothing that's got a fabric softener on it, it sticks to you. Like your hands smell of that fabric softener, no, because those thorns just stick, like, and they stick to the inside of your nose when you smell it. And that's what a hormone disruptor is, because in it sort of sticks to your smell receptors, and then it sort of like blocks that receptor from being able to, so
Yeah.
you
You
smell
want
your
more of it to be able to smell it because you can't
yeah.
smell it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, so and when something artificial is blocking your one of the receptors in your body, and it can't do what it's meant to be doing, that's when your body goes, in a very sort of basic sense. And those thorns are really sticky because, if you think about it, if you try and if you've touched something, or you've washed something with a fragrance on it, like being able to get rid of that fragrance takes a really long time. So yeah, I reckon like that's the fragrance is prolific. I mean, if you think of the word fragrance on any of the ingredient labels on any product, that could be made up of at least 1,000 chemicals.
Get out of
And
town.
yes, so I guess the brand or the company, or they don't need to of it, they don't have space to put those 1,000 chemicals on that little label there, but they're not required to, because it's their IP, it's their fragrance signature and that sort of stuff. But that word fragrance can hold up to at least 1,000 chemicals on there, and
Wow.
that's really scary.
Yes. We don't use any of that stuff anymore. We used to, but we went to the UK to visit my family a few months ago, and my family use all of the things, and it's no judgment because it's like people. This is,
You don't know what you
normal, right?
yeah, yeah.
And why would they be advertising it if it was bad for us? That's kind of like the mentality that we have. And Louis, my son, has brought clothes home that were washed at my mum's house, and 6 months later, you can walk past his bedroom and you can still smell it.
Yeah.
It's full on.
Yeah, yeah. Sunscreen's also another one. They put it
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Really, you're just wearing, so we have our own, but sometimes at school they make you use those. things, and my kids' uniforms come home smelling of that, and I just can't get it off. So yeah, it's everywhere. It's in literally infiltrated everywhere. And then you've got the fragrances in, public spaces where the air fresheners that are
Yeah.
gone off. It's just everywhere. It's really hard to avoid, but it's not about sort of, I guess, living in a bubble either. But it's about, I guess,
Having an
uh,
awareness around it.
having an awareness and trying our best to, you know, share and educate and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
my understanding is, I explain it since it's a radio, our body's like a radio. It's just the volume control. Some people have a very high volume control, like myself. So I notice things, and I feel it on my body. And some people have a very low volume control. It doesn't affect them, like, fragrances don't affect them physically, but it does not mean that they're not getting affected.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's still doing something in their body. It's just not, showing up in a big headache or something, or it might be a so mild headache that it's just not something that they notice. So definitely is still affecting everyone because it can't, it's not selective in that sense. I don't think chemicals are selective in terms. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so whilst you might not have symptoms, I still think it's really important to, be aware of it, and yeah.
Yes, definitely. That we could keep talking about that, but we're here to talk about the tooth powder.
Yeah.
So you, in your journey, you had been diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivities, and you came to a point where you were sort of digging deeper, and you mentioned the sugar in your toothpaste. And you were at a conference or on an
Yeah,
online
so it's an
conference
online
and started
conference.
to find out about other alternatives.
Yeah.
So what happened from there? And I guess maybe tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about what some of the things that are risky in supermarket brands and the product that you make and all of the good things that are in that.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So the detox summit was, all around detox. And for me, being someone that has some of these things, and, I've worked on my detox pathways for a very long time, continue to do that because that's the way of managing exposure and that sort of stuff. So I was really fascinated, wanted to learn about, what else we could do from a detox point of view. And yeah, so there was a whole topic around oral microbiome. And that was when I went, oh my gosh, like no one's talking about oral microbiome. That's in like 2020, end of 2020. Like, the focus is so heavily on gut microbiome, which is it's important. But if you were to think about it, if you ask someone, go point to me on your body, where does your digestion start? A lot of people unconsciously just point straight to their tummy. Your digestion starts in your mouth because that's where we put the food in. Our teeth are there mechanically to sort of break down the food. And that was also something I spoke about a lot with my coaching, well, health clients, going, when you eat your food, like you can count, you look at someone might chew their food 3, 4 times and swallow. You're meant to chew your food at least 15 to 20 times, and that's to break it down small enough so that it takes a lot less energy and effort for your tummy or your stomach to, break it down further. So yeah, your digestion starts in your mouth, and like it was just such a aha moment, because I was like, no one's really talking about that in terms of our mouth. A lot of times, we just go to the dentist for aesthetic reasons for our teeth to get it clean. But like, where's the understanding of all the different microbiomes that are in our mouth, the saliva, how the enzymes in there are sort of helping to break down. And of course, if we've got not so happy oral microbiome in our mouth, every time we swallow or drink or eat, all of that's going into your gut. Yeah, so that for me, that was a huge aha moment, on top of the fact that I hadn't really heard about tooth powders before. So as I got into it, and a lot of tooth powders use clays as a bit of one of their ingredients. And we all know, like, bentonite clay is a really good clay to use in terms of drawing out toxins. So that kind of all made sense. And being someone that obviously makes a lot of my own products at home, I kind of had all those ingredients. So just, yeah, sort of didn't really have a recipe to go off, but kind of just looked at everything and played around with some proportions and got to a proportion of different ingredients that I liked and didn't taste too bad because clays are quite, earthy too.
Yeah.
And then popped some essential oils in it and was like, oh, this is great. So I guess the sugar piece came in because of the whole hidden sugar part too. But for me, it was also a huge, and this was nothing to do with the oral detox, the detox summit, but I just went, wow. I mean, I've tried for years, or I'm not trying, I've practiced for years, avoiding sort of like sugar in my diet or, just some natural sugars like, honey and stuff, but nothing processed and all. And I'm literally brushing my teeth first thing in the
With
morning and
sugar.
after night with sugar, and I'm giving myself a sugar hit. So it was
Right.
nothing to do with the sugar in the toothpaste being bad for my teeth. That wasn't what my concern was about. It was more what it was doing to my brain
Yeah.
because I was fascinated with my, brain health. So other than gut microbiome, there's so much focus on, like you say, with physical health and stuff, your body, everyone wanting to be 80 or 90 with like a 40 or 50-year-old body because we want to be as fit as possible. But I'm like, you can't be 80 or 90 with a 40, 50-year-old body with a 90-year-old brain. Brain health is so important too. Like you also have to work on your brain health and your brain wellness. Because like, there's a rise of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all these sort of neurological sort of um, illnesses and issues also related to, I guess, a lot of things that I guess we're practice doing in all other parts of our lives. But yeah, so I was like, why am I giving myself a sugar hit first thing in the morning and last thing at night? Like, if I didn't have that sugar hit first thing in the morning and last thing at night, is that going to help me with my cravings during the day? Am I
Mm.
cognitively function better, be able to focus better? Because, with all the chronic fatigue and all, I was having a lot of brain fog and all these things. And so for me, that was the curiosity going, is that going to help me feel less foggy or, have less cravings during the day where I feel like I want to get that sugar hit and have a piece of chocolate or something. And at night, is that going to help me sleep better? Because literally having that sugar hit and that sweetness is that dopamine hit just before I go to bed. So I took that out. And because like I tried to find a toothpaste that didn't have sugar on the market, but I couldn't find one.
Wow.
Um, and maybe I didn't look hard enough, but from what I had on offer in the shops around me and even online, couldn't find one. And you've got alternatives that have your monk fruit or your stevia or xylitol, but that was still some sort of sweetness. And
Mm.
there were also toothpaste that said we're sugar free, but then when you brush with it, it still tastes sweet.
Sweet. Yeah.
That was, yeah. So for me, I learned a lot about how it's all about sugar substitutes and all. You can say you're sugar free, but then if you're using
Mm.
something that's not potentially actual sugar, but it still tastes, at the end of the day, it still tastes sweet. So it's not about the sugar, it's about the sweetness that we taste on our tongue. And you don't have to swallow it. Your brain will detect the sweetness and it sends all these, lovely messages and gives you that dopamine hit. So yeah, I think it definitely worked. I felt a little bit more focused and less sort of like compulsive or sort of those cravings during the day.
Wow.
And I haven't really gone back since because so I did a bit of a test. I think probably maybe about a week or two after using the salt base because we only use salt in our tooth powders with essential oils. Went back and used the normal toothpaste, and every now and then, if you're in a situation where maybe just out of curiosity, I'll go back and try it. The toothpaste normal toothpaste or even any other like just tastes extremely sweet and
Yeah.
it's sweet to the point of uncomfortable like never eat a lolly that's sweet either sort of thing. So yeah, for that was kind of how the tooth powder came about. So yeah, but
um, so did you ever, just with that sweetness, you're like aware of the dopamine hit? I'm conscious of like starting the day with sugar for the glucose spike. Have you ever
no,
trialed that
I
with the
have not, but
CGM?
I've been it's been on my to-do list forever. Like I really want to buy a little glucose
CGM, yeah.
monitor. Yeah. And yeah, test it with brushing with toothpaste and brushing with the salt thing. I
Mm,
It's been on my list. I'm scared of needles, but just punching it, but
yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't really hurt. But
But
Yeah,
even
that
with that dopamine, like
yeah,
that, it's yeah, and especially when you've got young kids, right? That they're they're driven by sweetness for some reason,
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, so you've got that added issue of a kid maybe wanting to swallow their toothpaste as well,
yeah,
which is not good.
yeah,
So you were using natural toothpaste, and sugar was the main thing, or like sugar
yeah,
substitutes was the main thing that you were like, oh yeah, that's not cool. But
yeah.
before you started using natural toothpaste, if you were using a supermarket brand, like, can you name some of the really bad things that are in toothpaste?
Oh, you've got your sodium lauryl sulfate. That's probably
Right.
the number one that, it makes our toothpaste foamy and makes us feel like, we've got a bubbly, foamy mouth that feels like it's clean. That's a foaming agent that's, a well-known sort of nowadays, lots of research around it being a hormone disruptor.
Right.
Then you've got your triclosan, which is a pesticide.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so, and triclosan's actually what they call, I can't remember the word, but it's it's a bio it's in fish, it's in seafood, it's in our bodies already. Like, it's
Okay.
biopersistent. So it's well aware that's already, because all the research scientists have done blood tests and, tests on organs and stuff, and they can see that this is already the in our system, in our
Because of it, because of
well, not specifically because of toothpaste, but it's also used in a lot of other sort of
okay.
products, but
Yeah.
it's there and it's
It
in.
doesn't get removed from our system.
No,
No.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't get detoxed. The liver can't get it out. Then glycerin's probably one that's quite a simple ingredient that you see quite often in
Yeah.
toothpaste. Um, and it's there to sort of help it make that pasty sort of feel, but it leaves a coating on your teeth. Um,
Okay.
I kind of liken it to like you're wearing a raincoat. So, the water just washes off and that sort of stuff. And to a certain extent, your teeth are a bone, like it's 90% hydroxyapatite, which is calcium and it's a bone. So, it needs to have it's porous. It is, it needs to be breathable. And when we put that sort of, when the glycerin just keeps staying on with every time you brush your teeth, it's not giving your teeth that sort of breathability and being able to sort of remineralize itself and
Sure.
absorb the minerals and stuff. So yeah, I mean that's one of a few. You've got all your other sort of like your PEG, PEG6, and so many different types of things that are in toothpaste.
Fluoride?
Fluoride, yes, fluoride. Fluoride's it's a very sort of like, controversial ingredient. Um, I don't, before, I think it's one of those ingredients that we've just known forever. We've been told that we need fluoride in our
Yeah.
toothpaste, and no one's ever really sort of disputed it in that sense. Got fluoride in your water too. So we have a house water filtration system
Yeah,
that's done
same.
with our meter. So everything in the house, so like when I go and drink water outside, like I can taste it. I can taste everything, chlorine,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I can
So
smell
I
it
think
when I
fluoride,
walk past a
yeah,
tap that's got chlorine in
yeah,
it.
even in a
Yeah.
cup, yeah, in the
Yeah.
glass. So I think fluoride's kind of, if you look at the history of fluoride, it was put in a community because they thought, it would help with and this is like 1920s or something. So different sort of environment, and it's just stuck since then. It calcifies the pineal gland. There's research that shows that, and really, potentially, I think they say that it's good for kids to a certain age to have some fluoride because it helps strengthen the enamel. But after that, you don't really need to. But every adult in the world is using a fluoride toothpaste. And if you look at the WHO data, I think there's about, I don't know, 4 billion people. At least a quarter of the population, of the world population, has some sort of oral health issue, whether it's a cavity or gum, blah, blah, blah. And if fluoride in toothpaste is actually meant to be doing what it says that it's doing, why does a quarter
Preventing cavities.
Yeah, why does a quarter of the population still have this issue? So that's my sort of like,
Mm.
don't really think fluoride's the sort of like, the
The
end all
winning factor.
solution.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In terms of being a prerequisite in the
Mm.
toothpaste. So yeah, so
With the pineal gland thing, I heard that, like you just mentioned, the calcification of pineal gland because of fluoride, and I heard that for children, if they have too much fluoride, or I don't know if it, what's okay and what's not, but
yeah.
that calcification of the pineal gland can actually inhibit their intuition.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interestingly, if you, well, I decline fluoride for my children at the dentist, and there's never any questions asked as to why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, I think they kind of know that it's not
yeah,
actually great. Yeah.
yeah.
So, anyway,
Yeah, so I actually looked it up. It's actually not even a quarter. It's 45% of people suffer from oral diseases. So 3 out of 4 people.
wow.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I just think that potentially maybe fluoride was useful then. It maybe not as useful anymore. And at the end
Yeah.
of it's a byproduct of aluminum extraction of
Okay.
aluminum extraction. So it still makes it a chemical. Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk to us about, before we talk about what's in your tooth powder and like how though the ingredients in it benefit our teeth? Can you talk a little bit about tooth remineralization? Because you've mentioned it. I
Yeah.
think that it's something that we're not really educated on, or something that we know very much about in terms of like what the possibilities are for like tooth regeneration and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I'm
can you just sort of explain how that works, or not
So,
really?
I'm not the expert. Like, it's also I've been learning as I've been
Yeah,
going
that's
to the
okay.
dentist. Yeah.
This is how we all like
Qualified.
learn though. Like,
Yeah. Dr. Stacy has a really good podcast explaining that. But from my understanding and what I've learned, at the end of the day, our teeth, we've got, obviously different layers. You have your enamel and all that sort of stuff. And in my eyes, I see it like the moon crater. We've got, it's moon crater, you've got a couple sort of craters, and the more you can plug those craters up, and that's, obviously that's the whole remineralization thing, and the smoother your surface is, and that's, where you don't get sensitivities and stuff like that. So,
okay,
um, hydroxyapatite is it's a mineral, and 90% of your tooth is made up of this mineral called hydroxyapatite. So I guess fluoride was sort of heralded as the ingredient that could sort of help that. But, now hydroxyapatite's like the new in ingredient that obviously matches a lot closer to what your tooth is made out of.
okay, yeah,
And then helps with that remineralization in terms of sort of, plugging up those craters, as
yeah,
I call it. That's totally my interpretation of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've read somewhere also like that idea of like if you've got scratches or something on your teeth, it helps to repair those. But
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of a new concept for a lot of people that is even a possibility, right? Because the options and how we've been kind of educated over a long period of time is you have to brush your teeth when you're a kid with fluoride toothpaste. You have to go to the dentist, and the dentist, if you've got any kind of damage, you get a filling.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's no like, if you do this, you can remineralize your teeth. We're not really educated on that. But there are products, and the one that you mentioned, hydroxy, how do you
Hydroxyapatite. Yeah.
appetite, is the bomb when it
Yes.
comes to tooth remineralization.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's that plus, obviously, we have to take into consideration our mouth we're literally using it 100% of the time, whether we're talking, it's moist, we're drinking, we're eating, we have breaks in between, and that's when your saliva builds up to sort of, keep it moist and that sort of stuff. So there's also a lot of other factors that sort of
Yeah,
can help with having a balanced diet, having the right minerals. the right vitamins all contribute to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, from a, I guess, teeth cleaning point of view, in terms of a product, hydroxyapatite is a new ingredient that's come on the market in probably the last one or 2 years. It's sort of really started taking
Yeah.
a lot of action around being an alternative, and an alternative to fluoride,
Yeah.
being able to help with mineralization. So with hydroxyapatite though, there are a couple of different types.
Ah.
Modern, so there is, you might hear or see in on toothpaste or in the market or people talking about it, there's a nano hydroxyapatite,
Ah.
non-nano hydroxyapatite. So even with hydroxyapatite, that can be made in a laboratory. So
Ah.
nano and non-nano purely um, it's particulate size. So nano being the tinier version of it, and non-nano being a little bit of a bigger particulate. They're still really tiny. But the only way, from my research, and it's purely my research, that you can achieve a nano hydroxyapatite size is through a laboratory. It's synthetic. It's through a
Okay.
laboratory. So we choose to use a non-nano, which is purely natural, and that is derived from bovine bone, because
Oh, okay.
hydroxyapatite is bone. So it's ground bovine bone. So um, with the nano, I've also learned from some dentists who are, obviously doing their own research and really interested in hydroxyapatite, that there are different shapes of hydroxyapatite,
Ah.
needle shape. So if you look at the microscope and you look at the nano hydroxy, some of them are needle shaped, some of them are like more of a star shape. There's I think 2 or 3 different shapes. And the needle shape is probably one, based on a conversation I have with a dentist, not one that you want to avoid because it can cross the blood-brain barrier. And there is a
Oh.
lot of this upcoming research on the issues of nanoparticles in our body, like in how that impacts
Mm.
our, not I think there's some research that shows there's not enough research to know what the impacts are of nanoparticles in our body. So
Oh, wow.
where some of these yeah, this, I guess if you dig deeper into the hydroxyapatite piece, there are some conversations around that.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So we're not looking for any other toothpaste because we're talking about your
Yes,
tooth
two powder.
powder.
Yeah, so we can keep them on
But
nano.
if people are
Let's
looking
keep
for a
on it.
toothpaste with
Yeah.
hydroxyapatite in it, then the nano is a no-go.
Well, I
Prefer
mean,
is not as preferable.
yeah, but you'll find that that's generally what's in the market.
Ah.
Or they just say hydroxy. They don't actually tell you whether it's a nano
Ah.
or non-nano. So it's worth
Oh, okay.
asking. It's just worth asking,
Okay. Yeah.
finding out. So
Yeah.
yeah, our tooth powders have 5 basic ingredients.
Yep.
Your 2 types of clays, your bentonite and your kaolin clay. You got your calcium carbonate, which is that, again, a calcium that's sort of supporting that sort of remineralization. And then you've got your bicarb soda and your salt. So we use Mount Zero salt, which is local to Victoria, sort of in partnership, harvested on indigenous land, full of minerals. So it's not about one ingredient
Mm.
being the hero. It's really just how all these 5 base ingredients really interact together and help support that sort of really nice alkaline environment that is better for your oral microbiome in your mouth rather than an acidic one, and it helps to clean your teeth at the same time. So yeah, I guess at the start, I just really created the tooth powder to, as a mechanism to clean my teeth, just to replace my toothpaste. But over time, the more research and learning that I did, I just, while all these ingredients are doing a lot more, they're really helping to create the right environment in the mouth, to really support your oral microbiome too, which at the end of the day, if we have happy oral microbiome, we have happy gut microbiome.
Yep.
And our gut and our brain and our mouth and our brain, they're all connected. So that just, it's not the solution to better health, but it contributes
It
to
contributes. Yeah.
everything.
Every bit helps, especially when we do have so much exposure to so many toxins, like
Yeah,
where we can make a difference. All of those things add up, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
You're
Yep,
also with your tooth powder. So you've over the last what 3 or 4 years, you've got a growing brand, but you've also got a very strong philosophy about where you source your ingredients and also your packaging.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like an environmental, the environmental impact or lack thereof that's really important. That
yeah,
part of your
yeah.
values. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? And this can kind of circle back to that little message I had in my tooth powder
Oh, yeah,
delivery that said
yeah,
how many
yeah,
tubes of toothpaste had been stopped from going into landfill because I'd bought
yeah.
powder.
Yeah. Look, so I mean, I'm pretty sure your community is one that has a lot of glass empty jars underneath it, and I'm one of them. Like I try, we don't use plastic as much as we possibly can for food containers and stuff. So when I made my tooth powder, it was just a no-brainer that I reached for one of my empty glass jars and chucked it in there. And I was like, yeah, that's easy. Like, I don't need a tube or I don't need anything else to use. And so that just became a very easy decision to make that. Of course, I was going to put them in glass jars. Like I would, just the thought of ordering plastic was not never a solution. I considered aluminum or metal, but we couldn't use that because some of the ingredients could interact with
Oh
them
yeah.
and not have a good result. So it was always glass. Yeah, and as I did some research, I was like, oh my gosh, we throw over 1.5 billion tubes out a year.
Wow.
And all of this is single-use plastic. There are a couple of recycle programs around that sometimes do collect toothpaste tubes, empty toothpaste tubes, but it's like I don't think anyone really does that. And or I think I'm not sure if they've actually stopped it or they haven't been able to recycle them and not, be able to follow on. But yeah, so I worked out, just based on the quantity of tooth powder we have in our jars and, usage over time, that it equated to about 2.5 tubes of toothpaste. Um, and yeah, I just think it's really important. So I had this audacious goal of wanting to save 1 million toothpaste tubes from landfill. And initially I thought, yeah, I'll be able to do it in a year and a half. And it's so that I guess from a business learning point of view, it's still definitely a goal of ours. And it's exciting, I'll be so excited once we get there. But I'm not in a rush to because I think over time, it has been um yeah, it's been a huge learning curve because tooth getting people to sort of change to tooth powder is a huge behavioral change. We're going from something that's a tooth. I've not only changed the consistency from paste to texture to powder, I've then also taken out all the sweetness from it and go, here you go, here's a tooth powder that doesn't taste sweet at all. So, yeah, we're going at our own pace and it's absolutely fine. But I'm really, really proud, I think I was sending out some orders this morning and we're at 53,000
Wow.
saved. And I was like, wow, that for me is pretty cool.
And I love that you give that little message because because as a customer, I feel like part of that movement, right? You're letting us like join you on that journey, that which is really cool. And you also do refills, don't you, for your
Yeah,
tooth
yeah,
powders? So like
yeah.
that are in kind of paper
Yes,
bags.
they're in a biodegradable, home compostable refill
Yeah,
sachet that's
cool.
European standards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we have made certain decisions along the way. They're not potentially the cheapest option from a packaging point of view and that sort of stuff, but for us, these values are really important. And yeah, we're 100%, something that we stick by. And like we recently also we've got a distributor now, so I had to get my jars retail shelf ready, not just jar because so we had to design some boxes to go for the jars to go in. And there was an opportunity to say, for example, from a design point of view, use some, gold or silver foil printing, but all of that meant that the box would not be recyclable.
Recyclable.
So that was a straight no, that's out of the door. We'll have to think of another way of being able to get our message across in a in a way that means that everything is as per our, what we stand for. So yeah, and
That's
it's
great. That's great. Um, Before we close, dreams. You've talked about your 1 million, saving 1 million tubes of toothpaste from landfill. Dream. Dreams for other products, or are you just like tooth powder all the
um,
way?
we've got the dream always started with a bit of a series. So there was always going to be a toothpaste, a brushing,
Oh, yeah.
oil pulling mouthwash
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Um, the oil pulling is probably something some people don't like because of the consistency of coconut oil. It's in a more of a liquid form, so that should be coming out sometime later this year. That'll
Oh,
be
how cool.
and then I've always wanted to do a floss too because I think the sustainable floss in the market, um, whilst they are great, current solutions, I feel like I've got a better one, but I can't really.
Oh, you can't talk about that. You've got to
But
keep
yeah,
it secret.
but
Oh, great.
it's using an entirely new fiber that's not in the market at the moment. Yeah,
Okay,
a
great.
very iconic Australian iconic fiber.
Cool.
And it's all recycled, all circular economy, recyclable, sustainable, and all that sort of stuff.
Love it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us. We've kind of hit that we're right on track for hitting our hour, and I'm conscious of your time. So I really appreciate you spending this hour with me and sharing everything about your journey and giving us some important education around our health and improving it. Yeah, loved it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
I hope everyone finds it useful. But
I'm sure they will.
it's my
And we're going to pop your profile in the guest directory, so there'll be links to your website, and people can find out more about your products there.
thanks,
Thank you
Vivi.
so much. Take care, won't you?
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.